Chapter 8. Little Mikey walks the quiet road. The self-doubt of earlier has faded. His backpack is gone, and with it the comfort of clothes and food. But he can still go on. He looks up and the bowl of the world greets him. The sky is vast and grey, but slashed clear where the afternoon sun presides over open sky to the west. The air is cold and fresh. He does not know it, but he is free. He walks at peace until a howling begins behind him. Little Mikey is coming to know the sound of trucks, and this one is moving fast. He does not turn around. He is happy in the bubble of his moving world, the speckled tar that none will ever look at. The truck roar smashes past him. His body is rocked sideways, but he does not lift his head. His feet are his companions, and the breath that sails through him. He walks in silence, looking at the tar that is his alone. Hoot! He looks up, shocked, and sees a Tata 8-ton truck pulled off onto the shoulder 100 meters in front of him. It stands fantastic and huge, bright white against the pale grey of the sky. A hand appears out of the passenger window, waving at him. Little Mikey begins to run. Left, right, left, right. He rocks crazily as he surges forward, desperately trying to keep weight off of his ankle. As he nears, the passenger door swings open. He reaches it and looks up into the open doorway, way above his head. "Come on," floats a voice from up there. "Let's get going." "How do I—" "Pull yourself up." Just at the stretch of his arms above his head is a footrest made for men to climb up, and just ahead of him is the corrugation of the huge wheel. He reaches up, and with hands on the footrest and a foot on the wheel, he pulls. It's easy. In a moment, the inside of the cab appears. There is a grand empty seat in front of him, a throne high above the road, and beyond that is the driver's side and the most splendid man Little Mikey has ever seen. He sits smiling like some kind of sleek animal, beaming health. He is in his mid-40s, strong and proud, with olive skin that glows against his bright white teeth, even in this grey cold. He wears a thick white knitted jersey over a pair of clean, bright blue jeans. He has a chunky gold ring on his wedding finger and a chunky gold bracelet on his wrist, and on his feet are bright red sneakers. "Come on, my friend, you're letting the cold in." Little Mikey struggles his way up onto the seat, finally turning and plopping down. He leans over to grab the heavy door handle and pulls until the huge thing starts to swing and then clang shut. "Welcome." The man sticks his fist out for a bump. Little Mikey shoots his own out, reaching across the vast space between them, and then he turns in the huge seat, facing forward. "Brian's the name," says the man, reaching forward to touch off his hydraulic brake. "You?" "Mikey," says Little Mikey, looking all around. It's as if they are together in a tower, a castle, and all the world beneath them is theirs. "Seatbelt," says Brian, and Little Mikey reaches up to find it as the truck pulses into gear with a crash, jerking forward. The warmth of the cab begins to steal into him. Outside, the world begins to move, revolving slowly as the road winds. Silence settles in the cab. In the distance, a train is snaking its way through the endless flat bush. It's so long that Little Mikey can't see the beginning or end of it. Brian shoots a glance at the boy, noting the rider in his hand. "You like trick riding?" Little Mikey nods, looking up at him. "Yes. I seen them on TV. Amazing." Brian looks ahead. After a moment. "Can you ride?" "Excuse me?" "Can you do any trick biking?" Little Mikey nods. "I can ride a BMX, but I hurt my foot." "Ah, too bad." Brian rubs his palms up and down the big wheel, an old habit. He stares ahead. "You're a quiet one, eh?" He reaches forward, his hand going out to a row of buttons on his dash. Little Mikey gasps. Brian pauses. "What's wrong?" Little Mikey blinks and then turns to look at the man. What is it?" Brian's face is creased with concern. In a rush, and for what reason he doesn't know, Little Mikey tells Brian the story of Gordon trying to lock him in the car. Brian's forehead furrows, turning into an angry glare. "Well, my friend," he says at last, "I'm glad you told me. It's good to know what a person is dealing with." Little Mikey looks at him fearfully, still clutching the rider. "You must try not to worry. He sounds like a very sad man. I think he was just trying to help." He shakes his head. "Me, I'm not a person that wants to force anyone to do anything. He points a muscular finger to his chest, his gold bracelet swinging on his wrist. I'm a lorry driver, my friend. I'm a man of the road. My whole philosophy is each man must be free. He looks right, noting the train. Look at that, he booms, tapping the window. You ever seen such a thing? That's the longest train in the world. I read about it. Little Mikey sits up in his seat, craning his neck to look. It's carrying iron ore to the harbour. He turns to Little Mikey. You seen the red dust? Little Mikey shakes his head. If you go near the harbour, where the train comes from, you'll see everything is red. If you get close to the track, you'll see it too. There's red dust everywhere. It's iron, my friend. They dig it out up north and fill the train up with it, and then chug it down here to the sea. Then they take it to Russia. He shakes his head. Russia! Can you imagine a place so cold? Can you imagine all that snow? He shivers dramatically, his white teeth flashing. We are lucky with our mild winters here. That's why I keep my heater pumping. I like it hot. He shakes his head from side to side, slowly, as if pulling a thought loose or a memory. Ach, no, man, he says, his eyes screwed shut. That guy locking the door on you. Hell, that makes me angry. He waves a hand in the air. You know, I learned a long time ago, you leave people alone, they leave you alone. He reaches to his side mirror control, adjusting the picture of all that has gone behind them. It's like this. I like to be happy. I mean, look around us. He points to the windshield, pointing all around. Look at this wonderful truck. Look at this wonderful world. Just look. Little Mikey does. It is a kingdom of wintry green out there, tumbling and rolling, rising to the clouds that swirl low, cut through by the glistening black tar, joined by the clattering train keeping pace with them in the distance. A kingdom without end. This place is beautiful, but do you know why it is so, my little buddy? No, uncle. It's because I can see out clearly. My windows are clean, you see. I wipe them down so I can see. He turns to little Mikey. I'm clean inside, Mikey. That's why I can see clear. Brian leans forward, putting his elbows on his wheel, peering out at the green. He raises his left hand and with his right he takes hold of his wedding band, turning it on his finger, his elbows steering them along. I'm going to tell you a story, and you better listen, because this is the most important story you're ever going to hear. You ready? Little Mikey nods eagerly. Years ago, I had another business. That was way before I knew how to drive a lorry. I was in the textiles game. Can you believe that? I was a knitting specialist. What's knitting? It's how you make jerseys, warm clothing, made with wool. He tugs at his sleeve. I made this one, he says, smiling. Can you believe that? I used to have a company, and life was good. We were making money. My wife was happy. My children were happy. We had a house and everything. But little did I know, something was not right. Brian raises his eyebrows meaningfully, looking over at little Mikey and challenging him to guess. What wasn't right? There was a snake in the bush, my friend, a serpent in the apple tree. Someone I trusted was plotting against me. Who? It was my brother. Little Mikey's eyes widen. Yes, my own brother, behind my back. You see, he was my partner in the business. I was the man that made the jerseys, because I grew up with those machines. I know them inside out, and he was the one doing the money. And one day I come to work to my company, and I found out that everything is gone. The company was gone. Brian shakes his head, laughing. No, my friend, the building was still there, but the company, all our money, all our machines, they weren't mine anymore. All the papers that said they were mine, now they said something else. The government was taking it all away. He strokes his chin, his eyes wide and shining, his mouth open and smiling as the green world rolls by. You know what happened? What, my brother? He changed all the papers. He made it so that my company was not mine anymore. He said to me, Brian, it's because of China. They are making jerseys cheaper than us now. We are bankrupt. But I knew better. Why? Because not only was my company gone, but even my house. The paper that said my house was my house now said it was the government's too. Bankrupt. But my brother still had his house. That's how I knew. How come I was the one with nothing when I built the company, and he still had everything? How come? Little Mikey shakes his head, clutching the rider to him. There's such a thing as common sense, Mikey. If a thing looks green, if the world looks beautiful, it probably is. Common sense told me that I had been done in. I was so angry, my friend. I went home mad. My wife didn't know what was going on. What was I going to tell her? That I lost everything. My beautiful wife. I couldn't. I couldn't look my children in the eye. So what did I do? I got my gun from my cupboard. Your gun? Little Mikey's mouth drops open. Yes, my friend. I'm telling you about a real gun here. A pistol heavy in my hand. I know how to use a gun. I went to the army. I put my gun in my belt under my jersey and drove down to my brother's house, and he welcomed me inside, like Judas. Brian shakes his head, a look of wonder on his face. He welcomed me inside like nothing was wrong. And I was sick, my buddy, looking at his beautiful house that I knew I paid for with my machines, knowing that everything of mine was gone. He reaches into a cooler box stashed between them and pulls out a flask. You want a drink? He hands little Mikey a cup and pulls the flask onto his lap, opening it with one hand while holding the wheel with the other. Little Mikey holds his cup out and Brian pours, a rich brew of steaming hot chocolate. Brian pours for himself and replaces the flask. He sips, smacking his lips at the creamy heat. I sat with my brother, says Brian, gesturing with his cup to the dripping world out there. I sat while he told me stories of how he tried to help me, and I knew he was lying. My friend, I was thinking, this man has betrayed me. He has taken my house from me and my children, and I am going to make it right. I had my gun with me, Mikey. I even had my hand on my gun under my jersey. I was so angry. Brian shakes his head, taking another sip from his cup, looking out at the road running ahead. He shakes his head once more, this shake short and sharp, as if finally shaking something free. He smiles then, widely, and joy beams from his eyes. I had a moment then, Mikey, and after it I became a happy man forevermore. You know what happened? Little Mikey shakes his head, his eyes the widest they've ever been. I was looking at my brother telling lies, knowing he had stolen from my family, my gun in my hand. And then I just felt peace. Because even though my brother had done such a thing to me, I knew I didn't want to do the same to him. He looks over at little Mikey, eyes full of light. You know what I mean? My anger just vanished, like smoke in the wind. What was I going to do? End his life? My own brother? Another human being? No, man. Brian brings the plastic cup to his mouth, sipping with pleasure. He sighs loudly, smacking his lips, and then crunches the cup and drops it into a neat little packet tied around his gear lever. It was the best decision I ever made, Mikey. I dodged a bullet that day. Can you imagine if I had hurt my brother? Can you imagine how bad I would feel to this day? Can you imagine how this beautiful land all around me would be dark as my own heart? Because my brother would be gone. My windows would be dirty, Mikey. No, man. He shakes his head and smiles. I'm so glad I left that man to his days. I drive from morning to night, rolling through this beautiful land, and I'm free, Mikey. I'm free inside. I nearly put myself in jail that day. He reaches out and touches his horn. The vehicle blasts a booming note across the wintry bush and the empty, turning road. Little Mikey lights up with his own smile. He is sitting up straight in his chair, sitting high and bright like Brian, grinning at the rolling world. Freedom is contagious. Where are you going, Uncle? Little Mikey asks, suddenly aware that he doesn't know. Call me Brian. Where are you going, Brian? Straight ahead, my buddy. I'm part of the crew building this road. Little Mikey looks at the road snaking into the distance. It curves in a long loop left and then again right, far up ahead. It is smooth and clean, a dark river through the endless bush. It's a nice road. It's smooth as hell. That's my job. I bring my crew the bitumen. You know it, bitumen. No, it's what they use to make tar, the black stuff. I fetch it in Freeburg in the early morning, before sunrise. Then I bring it through to our work site. We're far up the road now. At the beginning, my route was just a half hour. Now it's a day's drive to my crew. We're working there close to the town of Grafwater. Brian looks left, fixing little Mikey with a smiling eye. Where are you going? Little Mikey winces. He considers telling a lie, but realizes he knows no other town to name. I'm going to Grootstad. Yo, that's far. You're on an adventure, eh? Little Mikey nods. You got a long road in front of you. Am I going the right way? Little Mikey asks, carefully. Yes, you can go this way. This road is the coast road. It will take you round past Albert's Bay, on past Grafwater, and then you will get to Highway 3. That's the big one, my buddy. Cutting straight through the middle of the country. That one will take you all the way to Grootstad. But it's far, eh? And you got to go up the escarpment. Oof, he whistles. Phew, you got to have a powerful vehicle to climb the side. Little Mikey sets his jaw, his smile from a moment ago turning to grim certainty. I don't mind. I'm going to get there. Brian nods. You will make it. I believe in you. He drives on in silence for a while. And then, why are you going there? Little Mikey sighs. I'm going there to see my mama. Ah, yeah, I see. They drive on. What is your mama doing there? Little Mikey sighs again. She's arrested, he says after a moment. There was a accident in Freeburg. She got arrested. Brian nods. Hey, my friend, that's hard. Little Mikey looks down at his rider. It was my fault, he says in a voice hardly above a whisper. What was that? I said it was my fault. How was it your fault? Brian is listening intently, leaning over to the boy, making sure to catch every word. Little Mikey tells him what happened. Brian shakes his head hard. No, my buddy, that's not your fault. How come? If it's anyone's fault, it's Mr. Langeveld's fault. Why couldn't he let your mama explain? Why must it be up to you? You made an honest mistake. Little Mikey drops his eyes to his lap. I didn't do what my mama asked me. Mikey, you know what? Little Mikey shakes his head, tears on his cheeks. This is a hard world. Mistakes happen. Sometimes you got to pay for them. But you know what? What? You choose the way you pay. You choose how you live, my friend. You can be sad or you can be happy. This world can be a prison or a playground. From my point of view, I think you're doing a great thing. I actually think you're the bravest person I ever met, hiking all the way to Grootstad for your mama. It's epic, man. Brian holds out his fist, tanned and strong and sparkling with its gold wedding band. Give your buddy Brian a bump. Little Mikey holds out his fist and Brian's big knuckles graze his own. You remember that, my friend. You're the bravest man I ever met, and I mean that. Remember, I've been to the army. Now, are you hungry? Little Mikey shakes his head. No, come on, you must be. I got a curry here. Eat some. It's still hot. I'm saving it for my supper stop, but there's more than enough for both of us. He reaches down to the open space between them. From his tuck box, he lifts out a polystyrene tub covered with a plastic lid. He rummages in a bag next to it, finds a spoon, and passes both to Mikey. Come, get some food in you. You can't go on a big hike with nothing in your stomach. Little Mikey takes the cup, balancing it on his knee, and carefully pulls the lid off. Inside is a mound of perfect, steaming white rice. You just dig in there with your spoon, my friend, and you will find the best curry you ever tasted. Little Mikey can smell the rice, fresh and fluffy and piping hot. Saliva comes shooting into his mouth and his tummy rumbles. Go on, dig in there, says Brian, grinning. Little Mikey pushes the white spoon into the white rice, down, and then pulls up a scoop. At first, he sees nothing but white on white, but suddenly orange floods out of the hole, and red, and juice glistening with turmeric, bay leaves, mince, and tomato. The most delicious smell wafts up to his nostrils. Oh! Little Mikey spoons a pile into his mouth and his eyes close at the taste. Oh! Yeah, now that's good curry. My buddy Mr. D for Desai makes it for me. Every day. It's the only proper curry. Little Mikey doesn't need to be told twice. He spoons another mouthful and then another, making snuffling noises as he sucks the steaming curry down. Brian looks on, happy to see the boy eating well, and then turns to the road. He peers up at the sky, judging the time by the sun dipping down to the green horizon, and then confirming his estimate against the blinking clock on the dash. 5:02 p.m. "Yeah, that's about right," says Brian, looking up at the sky again. "It's about time." "Time for what?" Little Mikey's mouth is covered with red sauce. "Time for something special. You just eat as much of that curry as you can handle." Brian clicks on his indicator and slows to a left turn, moving towards them. The road is unsigned and untarred, a gravel lane meandering into the bush. Brian turns the truck, and together they begin to bump their way along it. Little Mikey sits up straight in his seat, peering over the dash at the orange road winding beneath them. "Where are we going?" "We're going to the sea." "The sea? Isn't it far away?" Brian laughs. "The sea is right here, just over the hill. Haven't you been to the sea before?" Little Mikey shakes his head, watching as a new vista appears before him, slowly as the truck chugs up a hill. Inch by inch, the yellow road and the green bush disappear, and a blue expanse is revealed. "The road turns away soon," says Brian. "After that, there's no sea on your way to Grootstad. You'd best visit her now, before it's too late." Little Mikey places the curry down next to him, forgotten. They bump and churn, climbing the gravel hill. Soon they are cresting it. There she is. Brian kicks the truck down into first to clear the little rise, and then they top the hill and start bumping down the other side. It's not long before the beach is before them. Brian eases the truck to neutral, levers the handbrake, and flips his door open, jumping down. Cold air sighs into the cab. "It's chilly," he calls up to little Mikey. "Come on!" Brian is hopping away along the sand to where lines of breakers are rolling in. As he goes, he whips off his jersey, his jeans and sneakers, and then his underpants, and dives into the waves. Little Mikey follows as quickly as he can. He watches Brian blowing and diving. "Get in, little buddy!" Little Mikey sits on the sand and one by one flips off his shoes and socks, and then stands and chucks his clothes off, just like Brian. He limps forward to test the water. He touches a toe to the shallow foam and immediately draws back. "It's freezing! It's life!" Brian is churning his way through the water, covered with glistening beads, blowing and rubbing his hair and face and then raising his arms up high. "You gotta jump in! It's cold, but then you warm up after." Little Mikey hops from foot to foot, wanting to get in but afraid of the cold. He takes another step forward, the freeze searing up his leg, and then he laughs and runs, splashing into the first breaker, clearing it, and then falling head first into churning, freezing bubbles. He comes up laughing, shouting, raising his arms to the sky. All around him is the grey sky, and the low sun turning it to fire. "It's freezing!" "Yep." Brian surfaces near him and sends a splash of cold onto the boy. Mikey feels nothing, it's just cold on cold, fun on fun. "Ha!" He splashes some water back and Brian grabs him and throws him high. "Ah!" Little Mikey soars through the air, flying, the sky his own until the cascade of freezing bubbles claims him. "Come on!" Brian hits the shallow water and jogs over the sand, back to the truck. "Get out of there, you can't stay in the cold too long." He fiddles with the panel just behind the driver's door. He clicks it open, pulling out a hose with a nozzle and clipping it to the truck just above his head. "Come on, Mikey, let's get warm." He twists a tap inside the panel and water starts to dribble and then flow from the nozzle above him. In the cold of the evening, the water steams. "Ooh!" Brian rubs the hot water through his hair, then twists around so that it touches every part of his freezing skin. Little Mikey hops his way over the sand towards him. "Come on!" Brian steps aside, making space for the boy under the stream. "How does that feel?" "It's great!" Little Mikey wriggles under it. Brian laughs, reaching down to pat Mikey on his wet shoulder before stepping out so that the boy gets the full blast. He takes up a towel and starts to dry himself. "Well, what do you think, Mikey? Are we alive?" Little Mikey nods at him, the hot water cascading down his face. "Are we free?" "Yes!" Just then the water streaming from the nozzle starts to dry up. "Quickly, into your towel." Brian enfolds him in an old, clean beach towel. The material scratches at his skin, dry and warm as he rubs himself all over with it. He looks up to the man standing beside him and watches as Brian rubs his short, spiky hair. Then he looks up and out to the horizon where the sun is setting, all of this place mirrored in the grin on Brian's face. "Now that's fresh," says Brian, striding over to his pile of clothes on the sand. He hops into them, foot by foot, and soon little Mikey is dressed too. Once again Brian reaches into the cab, and this time he pulls a blue bundle down. "Here, I got something for you. It's a jersey, blue and thick and big enough to tumble down to little Mikey's knees. It was my son Jasper's. He's big now. He'd be glad for you to have it." Brian spreads a shawl on the sand and sits to eat his curry, spooning the food with relish. "Come, have your supper." "I must eat more." "Come." Brian pats the space beside him. He holds up a banana from his tuck box. "You got to load up. You got a long road to go still." Little Mikey joins him. He takes the banana and begins to munch on it. The two eat in silence. Ahead, the sun is a whisper above the grey water. Around it, the heavens have blossomed orange and purple. Brian leans over, his mouth near little Mikey's ear. "Now, tell me you are not free," he says, and then puts an arm around the boy's shoulder and hugs him close. Little Mikey presses his body tight to the warmth of Brian's side, wrapped up in his new jersey, and together they watch the sun dip into the water and finally disappear. Later that night, little Mikey lies curled on the passenger seat of the Tata 8-ton, a blanket tucked in around him, listening to Brian murmuring in his bed in the back. The lorry's heater is on low, filling the cab with warmth, and the radio plays softly. "Brian?" says little Mikey, speaking into the dark. "Yes, my friend." "What do you have to do to become a truck driver?" It's easy, man. You just need a Code 14 license. Just a bit of studying, then you can get it. And a bit of driving. Hey, if you decided you wanted to be a truck driver, you could get your learners at 17, and then you could get your license on your 18th birthday. Then you could start driving straight." "You got to be 18. "Yes, my friend, you got to be 18. Rain begins to fall outside. It patters against the windscreen in the roof. "Brian?" "Yes, my friend." Brian waits, his face turned up to the darkness, listening for what the boy will say next. "Thanks for the lift," says little Mikey finally. Brian smiles. It's a pleasure, my friend. It's a big pleasure." And then there is quiet once again. After a few minutes, Brian sits up, peering out from his bed to the passenger seat. The boy is asleep. He smiles and lies back, and reaches for his phone. He flicks it on and looks at the picture of himself, a woman, and 3 little children all smiling out of the screen. All have the same smile Brian wears. He kisses his finger and puts it on the screen, lays the phone against his chest, and closes his eyes. It is silent in the cab of the Tata 8-ton, but for the pattering rain. "My truck works for about 380 per hour, calls Brian across the noisy cab. 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 3,800 per day, 19,000 per week, 76,000 per month. They are back on the road. After a few hours of sleep near the beach, with the sound of the endless waves crashing through little Mikey's dreams, they woke just before sunrise. In the dark, Brian brewed them porridge on his gas burner, the two of them standing in the freezing dawn, and then together they wolfed it down just as color began to come to the sky, and then they were off once again. Now the land is lit up, although the sun has not yet crested the distant mountains. It is the time before shadows, the time when all the world is one, and Brian is talking of his great love. Now, I earn about 16,000 per month. So of course there's maintenance and diesel costs, and after that a couple of thousand that goes straight to the bosses, just off this truck. He reaches forward to touch the windscreen, as if checking his thoughts against the reality of the glass. So, how much is a truck? How much? Around 785k, that new. That's without papers. So call it 800k. Little Mikey nods, considering the mysterious numbers. So, my friend, what's to stop me getting a loan for 500,000, getting a truck second-hand, and paying it off in 2 years? Nothing? You're right, nothing. I'm saving up. I got a deal with my boss that when I buy my truck, we go into partnership. Who knows? Brian slaps his palm on the steering wheel, happy with his plan. My own truck! Man, that would be nice. The road loops towards the ocean. They can see the blue expanse beyond, before it a great lagoon lying still and shimmering among the hills. And you, my friend, what is your dream? Little Mikey opens his mouth to speak, but the words do not come. Come on, tell me your best dream, the thing you want the most. Little Mikey pauses, thinking. I just want to see my mama, he says finally. I want her to tell me that she's okay. Brian nods. He reaches out and clasps little Mikey's shoulder. I'm sure that will happen. You're a brave guy, and I think you will get your dream. Hey, like me, I'll get my truck and you get your mama. Brian squeezes the boy's shoulder and then turns his eyes back to the road. He squints into the distance, and then he shakes his head. Damn it, he says, reaching for the CB radio mounted on the dash between them. Tata 5, calling Big Daddy. Yes, Tata 5, crackles the unit after a moment. Vasye, where are you? Yeah, morning. I'm just coming round after the bay, but I see the stop and go's already set up. I got to get the bitumen through, man. Yeah, sorry, Tata 5. The inspector was on site first thing and wanted it all set up. It's month end. Damn it, man. That means I'm going to be late. I can see it's closed my end. Sorry, Tata 5. We'll let the boys know. See you later. Yeah, thanks, Big Daddy. Later. Brian stows the radio. Well, that's a problem. You see this traffic ahead? We're going to get stuck in it. The stop and go will only let one side through while they're working on the road. We're going to have to wait. It could take even an hour. Little Mikey sits up in his chair, peering over the dash at a line of cars ahead, glinting in the pale sun. That's okay. I could walk. Brian chews his lip, unhappy at the obstacle. No, I told you I'd take you to the highway, so I got to do it. I got a plan for my friend. The truckers reach the tail of the traffic. Brian reaches forward, hitting the hazard lights and at the same time pounding on his horn. He swings out into the opposing lane, empty as all are waiting for the incoming traffic to appear, and speeds down the line. Don't you worry. He rolls down the window and sticks his head out. Very important person coming through, VIP, he yells, pounding the hooter and sliding by the stranded line. Royalty on the way. Mikey, he says suddenly, grabbing the boy's knee. I want you to hear your friend Brian. You're going to make it up to Grootstad. And when you get there, you're going to call your mama and you're going to call me too, okay? I want all the goods on your adventures. You're going to tell me the whole story, and then one day you're going to come work for me in my road crew. You got it? I got it. Look in the back here, please. There's a backpack. You take that and my water and these fruits I have. You need some food on your travels. And you take this too. Brian holds up a money note. For just in case. He presses it into little Mikey's hand. Come on, he says. Get that backpack. You need something to carry your things in. Mikey twists round and retrieves it. Your friend Brian has a plan for you. The members of the road crew are beside them now, men and women wearing reflective overalls and bright neon bibs. All of them wave up at Brian as he passes, laughing at his antics. Morning! Brian shouts from the window. Is Mr. Solomon up front? Is Mr. Solomon there? Brian's road family all gesture, some cupping their hands to their ears to ask him to repeat, some waving mightily, others hearing him and nodding, pointing up the road, up and up, to the head of the stop and go. I think we're in luck, mutters Brian, pushing the truck as fast as he dares on the crowded road. If we can catch Mr. Solomon, he can get you through the stop and go easy, get you on your way. The head of the line is drawing near, and Brian is squinting ahead, sitting way forward in his seat, jamming his hand on the horn. There he is, he yells, pointing. Little Mikey looks ahead and sees a big yellow steamroller is just pulling away from the checkpoint. Call Mr. Solomon, he shouts out the window to one of the road crew who frowns and then nods and pulls out her hand radio. Get ready to jump, my little buddy, he says to Mikey. That's your lift over there. Mr. Solomon will get you to the other side, maybe all the way to the highway. Are you ready? Little Mikey nods, sitting up and clutching all his new possessions to him. I'm going to stop just here, then you hop out and go to Mr. Solomon. Just jump on, okay? He'll take you through. Brian guns the Tata, then jams the brakes in a hiss as they reach the barrier. The steamroller has slowed but is still moving. the man perched in the open cockpit above it, turning to see the truck pulling up. "Mr. Soul!" shouts Brian above the clatter of the bright machine. "Give this little one a lift, man!" Mr. Solomon grins, white teeth flashing, and he gestures to little Mikey, waving him on. "Go, boy!" yells Brian as little Mikey pushes open the big door of the Tata and struggles down to the ground. "Don't forget to call me when you get to Grootstad." As little Mikey hops over the open scar of the roadworks and dances round the barrier, with one of the crew pointing him on, and limp runs to the slow-moving steamroller, he is waving at Brian up high in his truck. And then Mr. Solomon is reaching down. The man's hand covers little Mikey's own. "What's your name?" The man roars the question down to little Mikey, his words clattering among the clattering of the machine. "Sorry, uncle." "Your name! You must tell me your name." "Mikey," says the boy. The man shakes his head. "I cannot hear you." "Mikey!" roars the boy with all his might, his name piercing straight up to the ears of old Mr. Soul, who smiles then, teeth white in a face darkened by decades of sun, and he plucks the boy from the raw tar, up into the air, onto the open steamroller. "Hello, Mr. Mikey!" he yells, and he clashes the gears so the machine jumps forward. "Bye, Brian!" yells little Mikey. "Bye, my friend!" shouts Brian, standing up out of his driver's side door, waving at the boy. Little Mikey watches as Brian and his beautiful truck recede. He shakes his head. The world of Brian has gone. And the world before that? He can hardly even remember it. He looks around at a new world rising to meet him. It is a world of wind. He is perched on the open side of the steamroller, balancing on a thin platform with one hand holding the roof structure for support, buffeted by the cold wind. Mr. Solomon is perched on his driver's seat next to him, and the open road with its steaming bitumen rushes along beside them, threatening to pull little Mikey in. "Clan William!" shouts Mr. Solomon. He has bright eyes sparkling in a mess of wrinkles, the eyes of the open road. The engine scream of the steamroller is all the sound in the world. Little Mikey can't hear him, only feel this magnificent moment as it churns through the open air. "Grootstad!" shouts little Mikey, thinking the man wants to know where he is going. "I'm going to see my mama." "Riverdale!" shouts Mr. Solomon, nodding and pointing at his chest. Little Mikey understands. Mr. Solomon is telling him where he was born. "Freeburg! I'm from Freeburg!" They cannot speak. The roar of the open engine and the beauty of the open road doesn't allow it. Mr. Solomon nods to him, patting the boy on the chest with a gnarled hand. He flashes a bone-white smile, giving little Mikey a thumbs up before turning back to the road. Impossibly, he places his pipe in his mouth and sets it to puffing, the chimney to their steam train. Little Mikey looks out to the vista all about him, hills carpeted in low bush, rolling away from the now distant ocean to run inland. To where? Little Mikey does not know. The vibration of the roller is all the world, the feel of the metal of the machine, everything he needs to know. He cannot let go. He would fall into the mighty wheels and be folded into Brian's bitumen. And he won't let go. He will perch here with Mr. Solomon, holding on with all his might, and grin at the rushing world, all his pain forgotten. Mr. Solomon takes little Mikey over a long hill, down another, and halfway up the next, when a second stop-and-go presents itself. He tugs at the boy's sleeve and indicates that he will be turning off here, that little Mikey must jump, and he slows for the boy to do it. And just as little Mikey is about to, Mr. Solomon pulls him close. "Don't lose your way," the old man says, his voice low and somehow apart from the roaring machine, settling as clear as a thought in little Mikey's brain. The boy glances at the man's eyes, and there is Mr. Solomon's diamond soul looking out at him. He nods, showing him that it is time to go. Little Mikey gives him a thumbs up and then turns to watch the revolving tar beneath him, gathering up his backpack. He launches off the machine and lands in a scramble, his palm skinned, his ankle howling, and stands to flash his teeth at Mr. Solomon, who is waving and churning away into the open works running up the hillside. The machine roar fades, and the lonely road returns. Here is silence, descended again. Here is little Mikey alone among a slow stream of cars, each with a soul burning inside. Here is a new world, and little Mikey turns to face it. He begins to walk, right foot forward and then swinging the throbbing left around to join, following the winding road ahead. He knows he could tap on the window of any car that he passes, with its lonely soul inside, and ask if he could be given a lift, but he prefers not to. For now, he wants to remember the world of Brian and that of Mr. Solomon, and walk and be free. The humid smell of raw bitumen is everywhere. Its heat clashes with the cold. Rain is threatening. Soon little Mikey leaves the pocket of waiting cars behind and enters the solitude of the empty road. Rooibos tea grows in the fields here. Little Mikey looks out on the rows of the plantation climbing a hill to his right. To his left, the country falls away into an endless plain, and beyond that the mountains are in distant blue relief. Low black clouds drift heavy out there, and lightning flashes in the distance. But not here. Here he is warm from his walking, and his mind is wandering in glorious avenues. He begins to imagine the face of his mama when she first sees him, how she will know that he has travelled far to be with her. He can see her smile and the pride in her eyes. She will know that he did just what she asked. He passes workers in the fields harvesting the tea. They have a truck and wagon with them. They wave and shout, and he shouts back, all of them within the endless rolling of bruised sky and open veldt and mountains like ghosts in the distance. The morning seeps into the afternoon. As little Mikey walks, the traffic is let loose from one direction and then the other, over and over. Still he does not want to hail them. This little piece of the road with its bush is his. The pain in his ankle is his. Beside the road are white cairns every few hundred meters. They are marked with numbers, distance markers he assumes. And from time to time he sits on them. Each flat-topped stone is a perfect chair from which he can look out over the plain. He watches rain falling there, sweeping the long and empty fields. He watches that open wildness that echoes the open wildness of his own heart. For a moment he knows he is of this world. He knows that he came from it and will one day return, and also that for now he is apart from it because all the world is outside him. Inside, he is pure. His ankle throbs, but the ache is good. It is proof that he has come so far, proof of his freedom. When he tires of sitting, he walks, and when he tires of walking, he sits. And then suddenly, nearing the end of the afternoon, a sign rears up out of the long road. Highway 3, 3 kilometers. Little Mikey stands rooted to his spot. It is miraculous, seeing this sign. It confirms that this is not a dream, that his journey is real. He wonders how far 3 kilometers is as he walks and walks. As night falls, the air chills, and so does his heart. With the falling of the sun, his hope begins to fade. With no vista remaining, and only the cold, loneliness comes calling. Suddenly his pain is not a sign of freedom, but of doom. He hears the highway before he sees it, and with it comes fear. It is a roaring thing, a living thing. His little road curves, and finally he sees it. Highway 3. Motors rush there, trucks shriek, their cries many times that of Brian's Tata 8-ton. These are 16, 20, and 25-wheelers against Brian's 6, howling on the road, festooned with winking lights like war chariots as they throb towards distant lands. He crouches in fright, crouching away from it. The highway is merciless. His little body can tell. In this twilight gloom he will be crushed by the screaming metal roar of it, as will any living thing. He treads along a worn footpath, a shortcut between this loop of the road and the next. He passes a sandy cave and steps towards it, wanting to hide there. At the entrance he finds a pile of animal bones beside the remnants of a fire. Perhaps he will come back here, he thinks, if Highway 3 is too much. He shivers and passes on, climbing the hill away from the cave up to the mighty road, and then he climbs over a pressed metal barrier onto the highway itself. The roaring. Long-haul carriers crush the air as they pass, sucking it away in their howling slipstream, rocking him back and forth. He takes hold of the barrier, bracing himself against it as another blazing monster shrieks by, and another. What do I do? He reaches into his trouser pocket and pulls out his money note, his heart banging at the thought of the wind of these great machines plucking it from his hand. He is about to hold it out when his blood runs cold. Approaching him, melting out of the growing dark, is a figure. Its legs are spidery between the revolving lights, too long for its body, and its head stretches. Little Mikey shrinks away, too afraid to speak, as the being solidifies, dark pooling from dark. White headlights flash, and little Mikey's brain scrambles to a new vision. It is not a monster, but a boy standing before him, holding a battered cell phone in his hand. The light of the cracked screen illuminates his grinning face. He is only a little older than little Mikey himself. He is barefoot, in torn shirt and shorts, with a smile seemingly untouched by the cold of this screaming place. "Where are you going?" the boy asks gently. "Grootstad." The two eye each other. The boy has no bag, no rider, nothing to call his own. He looks at all little Mikey has, his clothes and shoes and backpack. "This is a bad place to stand," he says. "They can't stop here. Walk a bit further, you will see. Just down the hill there's a lay-by. The wind is less there too. You'll be warmer." "Are you going there?" "Maybe." The boy smiles in the light of his screen once more, and little Mikey will never forget it. "Good luck," and the boy walks past him, merging with the dark. "Wait!" Little Mikey limps after him as quick as he can, but try as he might, the boy outpaces him, always staying just at the edge of the dark. And when the lights come sweeping past, he flickers with them, a shadow in the turning arcs. Soon he is gone. Little Mikey finds the lay-by he spoke of. Here in the valley the wind is lessened, and there is a sweep beside the road to pull off, and even a concrete table on which to eat. Little Mikey stands beside this table in what is now pitch dark. He sticks his hand out to the relentless highway, clutching his money note. Immediately a little car passes him, packed with the silhouettes of heads. Something cracks. Little Mikey watches, mouth agape, as the car fishtails left and right across the highway, the screech of it filling his body, until with another snap the container of people starts to tumble end over end. Metal tears as little Mikey cowers in the revolving dark. Finally, the car is still. Nothing moves within the wreck out there. Headlights swerve to avoid it. "Mama," he moans, Highway 3 roaring. He turns his back to the wreck, willing to return to Freeburg and to Big Jan's room. He could live there with Big Jan, help him with his deliveries, and maybe he could find another way to Grootstad. One day. He's ready to do it. He can cross back to the coastal road. He could even wait for Brian and get a lift back with him in the following evening. But it is not to be. A pair of stark white lights swerve on the great highway, pulling towards him, and past him, and twin red brake lights light a pale blue Nissan pickup that boils to a halt a little way ahead. "Hi!" he hears a voice call in the darkness. A man so short he is only a head taller than little Mikey appears in the smoking shadows. "Come, my friend, let's go quick. It's dangerous out here." The man passes his headlights and little Mikey sees him properly. He tipples about to the back of his pickup and yanks the canopy door open. Without stopping, he pushes round to the passenger door, yanks that open, and starts pulling out bags of groceries. "It's cold, eh?" The man wears short pants on his short legs, long socks and well-worn leather shoes. He plunges his hands into the cab and pulls out bags bursting with groceries, handing them to little Mikey. "Vorsie," he declares, sticking out his other hand. Without a thought, little Mikey takes it, and the little man's handshake sets little Mikey to shaking too, and then the man is gone, back to the back of the pickup. Come, it's not safe here." Vorsie chucks the shopping into the back and then darts to the passenger side for more. "Come, we better go." The bags are filled with Pepsi Max, cheese, milk, and Cocoa Pops. Little Mikey jumps forward to try to help. But there's no time. The little man tipples around to his side again, hopping into the cab, and little Mikey joins him. Suddenly, it is just the two of them in the little car, the swirling world of smoke and metal gone. Vorsi looks little Mikey up and down, the smile of wide open spaces on his face. "Hey, let's get going!" He punches the accelerator with his tiny, leather-booted foot, and off they go, barreling through the dark.
Hey,